kinds of power. On the one hand, the city's name evokes the power of empire, which controls its subjects by force. The Palestinians experience that every day. And here in the heart of this city, Jesus asks, "Who do people say that I am?" The answers pour in, hinting at a power that's utterly different, of an utterly different nature from that. Some people are saying, the disciples tell Jesus, that you are the beheaded John the Baptist, risen from the dead. Others think you're Elijah, returned from the heavens. Remember, Elijah was taken up in a fiery chariot. But you probably remember that Elijah was persecuted and pursued by King Ahab's wife, Queen Jezebel, for attacking Jezebel's worship of fertility gods instead of Yahweh. And still others, the disciples told Jesus, are saying you're Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. Notice that the three men named, John the Baptist, Elijah, and Jeremiah, were all in their own time confronted the powers that be and suffered the consequences. After listening to all these responses, which have overtures of qualities in Jesus, I mean, they were on to something, Jesus turns to his disciples, looks them in the eye, and asks, "But you, who do you say that I am?" Was there a nervous stammering among the 12? Before Peter, who was always ready to leap in, exclaims, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." The Messiah himself? In common thought, the title Messiah was charged with military and nationalistic overtones. The long-awaited Messiah would be Israel's fighting champion, delivering Israel from Rome's oppression. But notice that Peter nuances the title Messiah with another description. Peter says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." By adding this second phrase, Matthew's Gospel introduces the possibility of another sort of power, a power that operates not by coercion, but by love. A power, as St. Paul would later say, is made perfect in weakness. This power arises from trusting God as a child trusts a parent. It is rooted in that childlike vulnerability, openness to wherever God is leading, even through brambles and thorns. Jesus was willing to own the title Messiah, but he steers it in a new direction. His liberation, not only of Israel, but of all humanity, would be of another order, grounded not in force, but in the belovedness of a son in the eyes of a loving Father. Grounded also in his willingness to suffer, just as those three that were named, to suffer rather than to be a cause of suffering, to be able to suffer, because one knows oneself as beloved. As we find in that amazing passage in Philippians, Jesus did not count equality with God as something to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave and being obedient even unto death. This obedience unto death, leads to the revelation of God's power to vindicate, to raise up, to save, to cause to prosper. The liberation that comes to us from Jesus' surrender, from his self-offering, is the liberation of knowing deep in our bones that we are loved no matter what. We are loved unconditionally, unexceptionally, that is, without any exception, and eternally. At Jesus' baptism, Jesus has already learned his core identity. You are my Son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased. This love poured out for us frees us from our blindness, our harm-doing, our brokenness. It does not count these faults against us, but delivers us from their power and sees us through suffering, hardship, and death itself. What was declared to Jesus in his baptism was also declared to us in our baptism. You are my Son, you are my daughter, my beloved. With you I am well pleased. Nothing can ever take this love away. Bonhoeffer, in the last months of his life, in the midst of his suffering, facing a death he knew was fairly certain, came to this single powerful truth about his own identity. It is not our achievements, not our relationships, not even our attitudes or qualities that form the core of our identity, but simply this: who am I? I am thine. I am yours. And now our bidder will come to invite our prayers.
Amen.